Now, coming to Woodward Sports, Woodward and Main Street, the Woodward Sports Network Detroit Lions show. Let's go! Catch Gabrielle D. Phillips, Matt Broder, and Terry Foster for all the latest news on your Detroit Lions every week. Only on the Woodward Sports Network YouTube channel and woodwardsports.com.
Good morning, Woodward Sports, and happy Tuesday. This is your Lions Insider Show, Woodward and Main Street. I'm Gabrielle D. Phillips, alongside me, Matt Broder.
Good morning.
And Terry Foster.
Hello.
How are you guys?
Did we learn our lessons last week?
Yes, I've learned my lesson that I will always be predicting not the Lions. I'll be predicting for the Lions to lose next week because
I need you both to do that.
Yeah, I had wondered, is the juju going to be, am I going to cause this loss? And unfortunately, I feel not responsible, but I do feel the karma gods looking down on me a little bit.
I am responsible for the loss.
Yes, I did hear you are. Can you explain?
Well, we were up in the press box with young Matthew over here, and every time I left my seat to go use the little boys' room, the Lions turned the ball over. 3 for 3.
Facts.
So it really is your fault.
Yes.
It was like clockwork. Each time Terry got up, I looked to my right, the seat's empty. Penalty, touchdown, fumble.
I thought it was just turnover.
Okay, it might have just been turnovers. I'm maybe putting too much on you, Terry. But yeah, hey, it seemed like nothing was going right. The Lions played all right, but they just couldn't pull it out. They couldn't do it.
And it's just been bad news since. One bad tweet after another with information coming out regarding the Lions and the amount of people hurt from this game, which we'll get into a little bit later in the next segment. But 37-31 overtime loss for the Detroit Lions, home opener of their 2023 season. The Lions have once again been defeated by the Seattle Seahawks, defeated in front of a crowd of Honolulu blue and blue ski masks, which makes it sting just that much more. So we're going to get into things. Obviously, every recap show, we are starting with a review of our pessimistic and optimistic. So I'm going to get into things, kick things off here with our pessimistic. One of the things that was mentioned was the attitude being the reason to be pessimistic for this game, that the Seahawks were going to be extra hungry because they lost, and the Lions may be a little too inflated from their win against Kansas City. So how are we feeling about that? Was it the attitude that played into it?
I think a little bit.
Okay.
I think Pete Carroll had an easier time last week than Dan Campbell, because Pete Carroll could sell to the team, we're done if we lose. We're in trouble. We're going to be 0-2. Your season could be over with in September.
Yeah.
And Dan Campbell, he's just going around and say, guys, we're doing a great job. We're good and everything. That doesn't sell as much in the locker room as telling guys your season could be over with. Because if you go 0-2, your chances to make the playoffs are 9.6%.
Wow.
And Seattle is a team that wants to win its division. Seattle and the Lions are the same, pretty much. There's a lot of expectations out there, even though we don't hear about them. They feel they have a good team. They're not supposed to go 0-2. But here's another thing. I know some people are saying, well, same old Lions. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say same old NFL.
Okay.
The NFL is this weird pass-fail league where most games, or half games at least, are going to be decided by one score. You're going to be looking in the last 90 seconds of the game. You're still not going to know who won. Games are decided by anywhere from 2 to 6 plays. So look at the Lions. The Lions are 4 plays away from being 2-0. They're also 4 plays away from being 0-2.
Yep.
So that's the magic of the NFL.
That's why the Lions think you got to show up and beat the Seahawks on this game because of all those reasons. It's an opportunity to almost push one of your NFC foes out of the playoff race for that same reason. 9.6% if you start 0-2, miss the playoffs. That's wild. And you think the last two games that the Seahawks have beat the Lions, and Aaron Glenn talking in his press conference about the bad taste that it left in his mouth last year. It's a tough one to swallow. The season is far from over, and that SOL narrative, it's pretty sad that people are starting to surface again. But it's a long season.
And that's right. We look at things in little 15-minute increments because of the internet and other things. But yeah, it is a long season. But the other thing, the Lions are still in a good position. 24 of the 32 teams are 1-1 or worse. That's just crazy. But once again, that just shows SONFL. That's the way this league works. Everybody's pissed off. You know who they're pissed off? Where they're pissed off?
Where?
Seattle. And they won. You know what they're mad about? They said their pass defense sucks. They don't know how to put teams away. Their field goal kicker is bad. So the NFL is not only a pass-fail league, but it's a pessimistic league. People are pissed across the nation, even when you win.
Yep. And that's just how it's going to be. But one thing people weren't pissed about when they were going into the games was the opportunity to wear a ski mask at Ford Field. And I think this also plays into the pessimistic and the attitude. So do you think, now that the Lions have lost with the ski masks, and we'll get into the C.J. Gardner-Johnson issues later, do you think that this is an opportunity for other teams to clown the Lions now moving forward?
Yes, of course. Teams always clown the Lions. From the their little song that they made, everybody bites the dust, or another one bites the dust, to the ski mask. And now here in Detroit, the only time we're going to see ski masks is when people go skiing.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be coming out again anytime soon. Thoughts, Matt Broder?
No, I agree. It was one of those. If you're an opposing team in the NFL or really any sport, if a team's going to do that, they're going to play up that villainous mentality with ski masks before they truly have actually done anything. If you go out and beat it to them at their home field, of course you're going to send it back their way. Now you just got to see how the Lions, how resilient they are, how they fight, how they come back after a loss like this.
Which in the past they've proven that when faced with resilience, they're able to overcome it. They've built their entire brand around that last year, and we've seen them take a different approach this year. So going back to their roots and proving once again to the NFL that they can overcome a loss. Now to get onto the optimistic, we talked about the Seahawks' depleted O-line, but that clearly still was not enough. 0 sacks against the Seahawks. Obviously, one quarterback hit from Alex Anzalone. What happened, Terry? What happened to Aiden Hutchinson? What happened to the potential prospect of this being a huge game for stacking up those sacks?
It looked like the Seattle offensive line played better than we thought they were going to. The guys they replaced them, when I looked at them, they pretty much stood Hutchinson up, but also they couldn't sack the quarterback. They had opportunities. I kept hearing where they didn't put pressure on Seattle's quarterback. They did. He's an old man. The old man still has a little few moves, and he was able to avoid them. He stretched the pocket. He got the Lions frustrated. And what Dan Campbell was saying, well, we need to compact that pocket so then he has nowhere to go. They would get on him, and then he would just go somewhere else. So I don't think it was a case of not putting pressure on him. Just the old man had a few more moves than the young fellas expected.
What did you expect the Lions to do, and did they disappoint you in terms of that sack count?
Yeah, they did, and Terry again hit on it perfectly. They were able to get to Geno Smith, put a little pressure on him, but he just constantly evaded that pressure. There wasn't the push up there wasn't the push up the middle with the big boys, with the defensive tackles, and when Aaron Glenn and when that secondary, they're playing a man coverage scheme, those cornerbacks, their backs are to the ball. So if Geno Smith can get a little room to sneak out of the pocket, he's got 5-10 yards before there's any Lions defender. So it just opens up more of that field, and Geno Smith took advantage of it all day long.
And can we open up something now?
Sure.
We need to get Fat Ass in the lineup.
I know you're talking about Bugs.
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah Bugs, I don't know what's up with him and the coaches. They said, well, we looked at the game film and during the preseason, he wasn't quite up to snuff. So something's going on there. The dude played well last year, and all of a sudden he's a bum that can't play.
Doesn't make any sense.
And that's my guy. Maybe they heard that I like the guy, and they said I was pissed off Terry.
So again, it's your fault that the Lions are losing.
No, it's not my fault.
Okay.
It's they're not listening to me, damn it.
Well, then you also need to keep your butt in the seat when you're watching the game.
I'll do that
No
next
breaks.
time. I will hold it the best I can.
Okay. Only at timeouts.
Right. But one time I did go to get the pretzel, so that wasn't necessary.
Was it good at least? Was it worth it?
No, they had the good pretzels. I like the soft ones. I would like mine without salt on it, but they have the salt, and I'm good with that.
All right. Love to hear it. The Lions obviously had huge expectations. The fans had huge expectations going into this game, and there's been a massive kind of letdown across the board for everyone. Now, I heard that you might have a similar story as to the last time that you believe this big of a Lions letdown happened, possibly a loss against Green Bay.
Yeah, 1993 wild card game. Lions are up 3, and it's a tight game, and the Silverdome is going nuts. Because all they have to do is hold Green Bay one time, and the Lions are going to win the game probably. Because there would be less than 3 minutes left. The Lions will have the ball up 3. You can give the ball to Barry Sanders a few times and run out the clock. But what happened was the Lions forgot about this young man named Sterling Sharp.
Oh, no.
Who at the time was, top 3 receiver in the NFL. They forgot to cover the guy. So Sterling Sharp receives a 40-yard touchdown pass from Brett Favre, and the Silverdome went from what we saw on Sunday to complete silence. The only difference is they had to sit there for another 3 minutes and watch the Lions bumble it and not win. But that's the only game I can remember that I can compare it to, because this game, when Seattle won, that was it. When they scored, people just stayed in their seats.
Yeah.
They kept standing and looking like
disbelief.
Okay, no. It wasn't this blows yet. It was, I know the game is not over. They're about to play some more. And maybe everybody saw the hold on Aiden Hutchinson that was not called. And so I thought people were standing up saying, oh, we're going to play some more football. Or maybe they didn't understand the rules. If you score a touchdown in overtime, it's done. But they were stunned, they were silent, and they were ready to play some more football. And it didn't happen.
I was in the thick of that crowd, and I think it was a little bit of a combination of all that, like you said, the confusion of, do we get to drive again? What are the rules of overtime? But also, like, how was that not called? And then people being like, you can't call the call. Like, there's different rules in overtime. So I think there's a confusion all across the board that led to everyone just kind of standing around.
Now, guys, I'm going to tell you now and then on the show about my bourbon moment. I want to have a bourbon moment with Aiden Hutchinson.
Okay.
Because when they talk to Aiden about the whole, of course, he can't say anything, but what I would like to do is go out with him, get a little wild turkey in him, no tape recorders, no cameras, say, bro, what happened? And then get the truth from him.
Say they got a fistful of my jersey like they were getting all day long.
Right.
And no, I'm not blaming the refs. There were several bad calls on both sides, but we know it seems like the Lions are turning into the referee's sort of how-to moment. Every time the next game you see the Chiefs right tackle, Juwan Taylor, he got called for 4 false starts early in their game this weekend and ended up getting benched. We bet the Seattle Seahawks tackles are going to be getting some calls next week.
And we knew going into this game, it's Alex Kemp's crew that was calling this game, and they're known for a large amount of flags being thrown on games, so we knew that was kind of a factor in this game with the Lions against the Seahawks. But that is it for your optimistic and pessimistic review. We're going to get into the injury bug that seems to be overtaking the Lions locker room here after this break.
Brace yourselves, Detroit. As the sun begins to set, two of Woodward Sports' brightest young stars will be taking the mic for a brand new show. Woodward Nights with Broder and Broder. The dog days in Detroit are over, and the boys are unleashed. Join in on the banter and hop on the bandwagon of the #1 night show on the internet. Tune into the Woodward Sports YouTube channel every weeknight from 8 to 10 p.m. Woodward Nights with Broder and Broder. Woodward Sports' own Tom Mazaway and Sam Stick Day will be hosting our Lions postgame show after every Lions game all season long. Tune into the Woodward Sports YouTube channel for his hot-off-the-press takes, game analysis, and Kool-Aid sipping celebrations. You won't want to miss it. Join Maz, Stick, and special guests each week immediately following every Lions game, exclusively on the WSN YouTube channel.
Welcome back to Woodward and Main Street, your Lions Insider Show here at Woodward Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in on this Tuesday morning, another somber morning following the Lions' loss against the Seattle Seahawks. I'm Gabby Phillips, alongside me, Matt Broder and Terry Foster, starting your Tuesday off 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. every Tuesday, and then catch us back here again on Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. to prepare you for that Sunday's game. We have a lot to prepare for this next Sunday's game, and a lot of movement has to happen due to the injury bug that has overtaken the Detroit Lions. So I just want to run down the list here. And I may honestly be missing some because the list is so long that I was like, there's no way there's anyone I'm missing from this list. This includes everyone that went out with an injury during the game and came back in, because clearly, even if you come back in, you could still have something that they're going to find that was wrong with you. David Montgomery, St. Brown, Halapuli, say it for me, Matt.
Amon-Ra St. Brown?
No, Hala.
Oh, Halapulavati Vaitai.
Thank you so much.
I got
James
you.
Houston. James Houston, Kirby Josephs, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Aleem McNeil, Hutchinson, and Antoine Green all faced injuries in the game against the Seahawks. And most notably, the news that came out last night during Woodward Nights of C.J. Gardner-Johnson's torn pectoral muscle. Obviously, from the reports that we were seeing, the way that it was worded made it seem like it was a rumor that he had a torn pectoral muscle. But I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson himself confirmed this last night on his own social media, posting very somberly to Instagram, reflectively, about the season that he will potentially be missing with this injury, which just gives me another reason to say no more ski masks. It's just blow after blow after blow following this game with the amount of injuries that the Lions stacked up. Do we have to blame this on the turf? Do we have to blame this on the pads? What do we have to blame this on, Terry?
You know, I'm going to get mad at you and everybody else because we didn't talk about the turf until Aaron Rodgers got injured. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden we got to switch to turf. The turf is causing all these injuries. Before, dudes just got hurt. And now, back in the 90s and the 2000s, that you can call it turf, but they played on carpet. Ford Field is a more forgiving surface than what they played on the Silverdome, what they played on at MetLife Stadium. So I'm not blaming the turf.
Okay.
I'm blaming on these dudes are bigger, stronger, faster, and they're monsters out there. One thing I want you to do, if you ever get the chance, watch an NFL game from field level and watch how quickly players close on each other. You'll see a dude that's like 8 yards open. He'll catch the ball, and all of a sudden there's like 4 people on him in like a half a second. It's the most amazing thing that you've ever seen, and TV doesn't do it justice. But, I mean, this is not a physical sport. It's a collision sport. And so I'm blaming it on the athletes. I'm blaming it on the speed. And I'm blaming it on I mean, you didn't have dudes who weighed 300 pounds but could run a sub 540. I mean, you get some 300-pound dudes that were running 4.740s. Back in the day, your wide receivers and cornerbacks were running that. So I refuse. I'm just going to be an ass and not blame the turf because of Aaron Rodgers.
And C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he's one of those players who plays so violently. He's so aggressive, and he's not a huge guy, but he'll go after anybody, any size, any place, any time. And I believe it was one of those plays where he was tackling someone out of the flats, and he was just giving his standard, close and tackle on the running back. But man, it's a blow losing him, and especially for the amount of time that it might be. A torn pec muscle. It's nothing that will knock him out of his career. It's not any career-ending injury, but when you look at the Lions and the one-year contract that he signed, now the question is, do we see him again in a Lions jersey? I think that's what a lot of people around Detroit are hoping for, or at least wondering out of this news.
Now I have to take us back to training camp when everyone thought he had gotten injured out on the practice field, and the energy that completely shifted at that point, and players started talking about how much of an impact he has made already for this team in terms of the energy that he brings, the fire that he brings to the locker room, how he ignites everyone on the field. And now they're actually going to have to experience this without him in a game situation, potentially for the rest of the season, as you said, and then you don't know what's going to happen moving forward with his contract. And I think that's a huge player to be missing on and off the field for the Lions.
Definitely.
And when looking ahead, Brad Holmes now has to make a decision. I think it's going to be on the Lions' court. Do we want him back? Yes, we love that energy.
Yeah.
Yes, he brings a lot of things, but let's see how he returns from this injury. And the Lions are going to have to make a decision. They want to bring CJ back.
Another one of those injuries that was a huge potential blow, but it looks like it's going to be all right, and he has a potential to come back pretty quickly, is David Montgomery, who averaged 4.2 yards per carry that game. He is a key player that on the field, regardless of his attitude and what he brings to the team, and obviously he's a great veteran that's brought a lot to the Lions locker room, but it's very clear what he's able to produce for the Lions on the field. How much of a blow would this be if he is out? And how long do you think he's going to be out with this thigh bruise?
I think it could be significant, and we don't know how long he's going to be out yet. He said to, I think it was Dave Burkett of the Free Press after the game, he's going to be out for a couple weeks. But then the next day in the press conference, Dan Campbell says he's actually day-to-day with this thigh injury. So we'll see. But the type of aggression he runs with, the type of physicality he brings running behind that offensive line when they're healthy, it's the offensive identity for the Lions now. We have these weapons. We've drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and we have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Laporta, but that all works when the running game is working, when Jared Goff can get into the play-action pass. So, the physicality that David Montgomery brings and what the tone that set in that game before he went out, really before that fumble too, it's a difference maker. Now Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell have some decisions to make on how to distribute the carries with Jahmyr Gibbs, Craig Reynolds. Do you bring Zonovan Knight off the practice squad, or there's speculation, are you looking elsewhere? Are you looking for a free agent running back like Kareem Hunt or Leonard Fournette? A lot of decisions in week 3. We were hoping and maybe thinking the Lions had the leg in the running game before the season with Atlanta coming to town, but Atlanta's coming with a really powerful running attack, and the Lions have some question marks. Terry, what do you think about David Montgomery and what that loss could mean?
That's a big blow because the Lions' meat and potatoes is the offensive line and grit is what I call it. And it's just running up the middle, running off tackle, nothing fancy. So that's why I wanted them to keep Mohamed Ibrahim from Minnesota. He was an undrafted free agent, but I think he's a guy that can play in this league, and he definitely can play behind this offensive line.
Yes.
But they're going to have to get a meat and potatoes, no nonsense person to replace David Montgomery in case he's not able to come back. And now the fact that he says it's going to be 2 weeks and Dan Campbell saying what's day to day, it tells me that in the back of his mind, David Montgomery feels he's going to be out for 2 weeks. But the coaching staff is saying, "Come on, dog. You know you can come back earlier." And it may not be he probably can play sooner, but he's feeling it's not in his best interest to come back early.
You think, unfortunately, the Lions have 2 games in the next 10 days with the Packers in Week 4 and coming on a Thursday night. So even more time-sensitive pressure for these injuries. And Gabby, I don't know if you were going there, but we hopefully see Taylor Decker back this weekend. I know he's questionable recovering from his ankle injury, but they did lose Vaitai on that offensive line. It looks to be less than 4 weeks, but we really don't know how long that's going to be.
And what you hate to see is a situation like this where Vaitai goes out and you have Decker who's already out. Does Decker feel that pressure to maybe come back a little bit earlier than he should because he sees a hole missing there that he knows that he can fill? And then does this cause even further injury for him?
Yeah, that's a tough one. He is so extremely important to this team and to that offensive line, and just being able to have Penei Sewell on the right and Taylor Decker on the left. Unfortunately, and I think Vaitai is a huge part of the offensive line, but what Brad Holmes did in this offseason, solidifying their depth by going and getting Graham Glasgow, literally for this specific reason, you hope that you can just place Graham Glasgow into that right guard position and not have to use Matt Nelson at right tackle. But the value of the Lions having so much depth is now kind of gone because they need to use that up now. So the depth that they had is now your starting lineup. So what are they going to do with that second unit, and how are they going to prevent injuries for the rest of the season?
Decker does feel that pressure to return earlier, knowing the type of person he is. But he's got agents, he's got people who are telling him, don't come back until you're ready.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a debate with him and his people and stuff, and probably the coaching staff also.
Definitely. Now, another individual that we saw go down and was being evaluated for a concussion was Antoine Green, who you had a lot of hopes for in this game. What were your thoughts when you saw that happen, Terry?
I was like, damn. But, the thing that disappointed me is were they going to use him the right way? It seems like the Lions' passing attack is, let's not put Goff in a position where he's going to throw interceptions. Mm-hmm. He had guys wide open down the field that he just ignored. And so I think he's the check down kid. And then even on Antoine Green, whose specialty is speed, he hit him in the flat. So, yes, that's disappointing because I think Antoine Green has got something that the Lions really need, but they're not going to put him in that position to do that. So what's the use?
What's the use? Now,
I'm disappointed.
Of all of these players that I've listed out, who do you think they would be hurting the most without against Atlanta this next week? I'll throw it to both of you.
Oh, Terry, you want to take this first?
I'm going to go Montgomery because, once again, the meat and potatoes what the Detroit Lions are. It's running that football, running off tackle, being strong, being physical. So I would either pick him or one of the offensive linemen as being the key. But Dave Montgomery, every time he touched the ball, I had a dirty word that I told Matt every time he had it. I said, this dude is mean. He's rough. So I'm going to say Montgomery because he is the meat and potatoes of the Detroit Lions offense.
Are you going to agree or are you going to take a different angle with this, Matt Broder?
I'm going to agree and I'm going to take a different angle. Okay. I'm going to go the defensive route. But on offense, without a doubt, David Montgomery, he's that identity now of the offense and what they need to do to set up Jared Goff's pass game. But, losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson for an extended period of time, and maybe it ends up being the entire season, I think is a massive blow, both from an emotional standpoint as an emotional leader of that defense. But the dude is talented, and he's one who makes plays and makes tackles from multiple positions out of the secondary. So although, again, they have the depth to have reliable guys fill in, we're going to see more Tracy Walker. They drafted Brian Branch. You pray Emmanuel Mosley returns soon. That losing the type of player that C.J. Gardner-Johnson is, you can't replace that. You just can't.
I'm going to agree and disagree also.
Look at that, Terry.
You make perfect sense. But if the Lions are going to continue playing this fraidy cat defense where they got guys, 8-10 yards off the receivers, what the hell does it matter? So you're going to give up the play. You're going to give up first downs. You're going to hope and pray the other team makes a mistake, which doesn't happen as much in the NFL as it does in college. So, yes, I would agree with you. But if you're going to have my man playing 80 yards off the line of scrimmage, what difference does it make?
Valid. We can't rely on the receivers to drop 5 balls like they did in Kansas City and help out. Like you said, lucky things have been happening.
We've covered the fans, we've covered the players. Now it's time to talk about the coaches. Stick with us here, and we'll get into it right after this break.
Join Woodward Sports' own Jeff Iafrate along with special WSN guests for the most anticipated Lions season in decades. Filled with different surprises and expert analysis. You're not going to want to miss out. Go to our Woodward Sports YouTube channel on Sundays and tune in live from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. Now, coming to Woodward Sports, Woodward and Main Street, the Woodward Sports Network Detroit Lions show. Let's go! Catch Gabrielle D. Phillips, Matt Broder, and Terry Foster for all the latest news on your Detroit Lions every week. Only on the Woodward Sports Network YouTube channel and woodwardsports.com.
Welcome back. This is Woodward and Main Street, your Woodward Sports Network Lions Insider Show. I'm Gabrielle D. Phillips with Matt Broder and Terry Foster here to start off your Tuesday morning bright and early, 7 to 8 a.m. You will catch us here live at the studio, and then on Sundays you will catch us live from 8 to 9 to preview the game this week. It'll be the Lions versus the Atlanta Falcons. We're recapping the Seahawks.
A dirty bird, though.
Right.
But we're going to get into the coaching, a lot of question marks around what happened in that game, who to blame it on, and who to point fingers at. So we're going to play a little game here, and I want to see who you believe really needs to buckle down before the Atlanta Falcons come to town. Aaron Glenn, Dan Campbell, or Ben Johnson? Who do you think is in the hot seat to make the most change before this coming Sunday?
Well, it always falls back on the head coach. And when you're making that decision, I mean, he could have tried to win the game at the end, but he didn't want to give the ball to Seattle. You know, just it didn't make sense to me. But I was sitting next to Mazaway, and Maz was smoking a cigar in the press box, and he's going nuts. Just, what is he doing? Why is he? And they let a lot of time fall off that clock. You have the ball at the 50-yard line. The clock is not a factor. You run your offense to try to score a touchdown. You don't play for a field goal to send it in overtime. So Dan Campbell, who I always said he's got to remain aggressive, wasn't aggressive. If he's going to be true to himself, yes, you can run trick plays and do all kinds of funny stuff, but when it's nut crunching time and it's time to punch the other team in the face, he didn't take advantage of that. He's like, okay, we're going to play for the tie, and we're going to be conservative in this point. And I'm at that point saying, hey, fella, that's not who you are. Mm-hmm. And I think that bit him in the butt.
I think it contradicted himself or answered what he was trying to accomplish in his press conference after the game when he said the reason he wanted to take the field goal and eat up that clock was to not give the Seahawks the ball back. But going to overtime, playing for overtime, does exactly that. You're literally it's a coin toss at that point once you go into overtime. So I'm sort of with you. I would have liked to see them continue to drive down the field and go for the win.
Now, do you agree with Terry? Do you think Dan Campbell has the most adjustments going into this week, or would you look to Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson needing to make more adjustments?
Yeah, I think Dan Campbell could make some adjustments, and I do agree with Terry's points. I'm gonna focus on Aaron Glenn, and I think more in-game adjustments should have been done. When we went into the Kansas City game, a lot of fans, a lot of media, we were kind of thinking, is Patrick Mahomes going to eat the Lions defense alive? They like to play man defense, man coverage, and blitz a lot. Is that going to allow Patrick Mahomes to sort of pick them apart? And fortunately, Aaron Glenn broke all his normal tendencies. They played a lot of zone coverage, and again, a few things fell into their lap, but they played well, and it definitely affected how the Chiefs' offense was run against the Seahawks, who have a much superior wide receiver group. he let his cornerbacks and his safeties out there on an island. They played man coverage the entire game. And when that happens, when you're having Jared Jacobs go up against DK Metcalf consistently, of course Metcalf is going to win those battles sometime. And when you're not getting any pass rush, we're not getting any pressure of the quarterback there, it's just giving Geno Smith too much time. And he picked us apart.
Do you know what happened last week?
What?
Aliens were in Arizona. And so I'm thinking maybe those aliens got to Brad Holmes, Aaron Glenn, and Johnson because they all left who they were. They forgot who they were and became somebody else.
Yeah.
Ben Johnson, the offense was very vanilla. It was, we're not going to challenge Seattle. The defense, we're not going to challenge Seattle. Brad Holmes at the end. We got the ball at the 50-yard line with 2 minutes to go to win the game. We're not going to challenge Seattle. It's the aliens that caused this loss because they got into the minds of all 3 guys who became something else. And I've always said this about in professional sports. Whether it's good or bad, you have to be who you are. If you become something else or somebody else, you will fail. It's like Matt Patricia.
Oh, yeah.
When he came here, he tried to become Brian Belichick. And he was told, don't do that. But he's like, screw y'all. I'm gonna do what I feel like. And you know what? Didn't work. Dan Campbell, the rambling, gambling man, became somebody else. It didn't work. Ben Johnson became somebody else. Didn't work. Aaron Glenn became somebody else or something else and didn't work.
I want to get inside of their minds at this point just to see, like, between Kansas City and this past Sunday, what made you make those adjustments in that way? Because you were yourselves in Kansas City. Honestly, some of the most that I think we've ever seen them be. And they're being praised in the media for it right now more than ever. It's not like everyone's dogging on Dan Campbell for his kneecap comments anymore. Everyone is lifting him up. So why now, after a win in Kansas City?
I think what Terry touched on is that change of identity when they needed him to stick to his guns. And when the lights were brightest, he decided to play conservative. And you were talking about the rambling, gambling man. He's got to know when to fold them and know when to hold them. He's got to go for that field goal or go for that touchdown and choose in the punt situation earlier in the game. I believe it was a 4th and 2 on their own 45. They were up 4 points. That's when you need to punt and play the field position game. At the end of the game, be aggressive and go for that W behind that roaring crowd. I mean, they were loud. You gotta punch it in. You gotta make better decisions. So, and to be clear, and when you phrase the question, you talk hot seat. I don't think any of the coaches should be on the hot seat.
Okay.
We're just picking apart some of their decisions against Seattle. Yes.
Now, somebody that I don't want to pick apart, and he's obviously not a coach, but a huge part of the leadership of this team is Jared Goff, because he came out after their loss, and a big question was, Gibbs dropped that ball, and then you have the pick 6 and yada yada, and it's like, whose fault is that? Is that Gibbs' fault? And he said, no, absolutely not. Gibbs did exactly what he needed to do. He ran the route, and I was feeling pressure, and I threw it, and I made a poor decision in that moment. Obviously, this was his first interception in 369 pass attempts. How much of a difference do you think him coming out after that game and taking ownership makes in this locker room? Him saying, this is not Gibbs' fault, this is my fault, I'm taking ownership. What does that mean for that locker room?
Well, it means that he is a leader, and it means he's doing what he's supposed to do. My understanding, it was Gibbs' fault. He ran the wrong route, but Jared Goff is not going to say that. If he did say that, then you're throwing a rookie under the bus, and you don't want to do that. So Jared Goff did what he had to do. It keeps the locker room somewhat intact, and you're not doing the worst thing you can do. Take a rookie, say, it's his fault, wasn't mine, because you may never get this rookie back because he's young and he's impressionable and he's scared, and so you did the right thing.
Yeah, there's one person that can call out a rookie like that, and it's the head coach, and that's exactly what Dan Campbell did, trying to take the pressure off of his quarterback, who was 10, 15 throws away from breaking the all-time record. you love to see the leadership out of both of them. Dan Campbell both protecting Jared Goff, and also Jared Goff being the leader of that team and protecting his rookie. Especially after a loss like that, there could have easily been a lot of fingers pointed, but they seem to be banded together. And Jared Goff, that leadership is one of those intangibles, part of the intangibles that he brings to this team. So I love to see it.
Well, he didn't pass that pass attempt record. He did pass and make the record, a new franchise record. He had his 14th consecutive game throw for a touchdown at Ford Field. So that's a new Ford Field record. So we have that going into next week. Maybe he can extend that.
Oh, yeah.
But we're going to talk a little about what needs to happen before Atlanta comes to town. Give a little preview for this episode coming out on Sunday. Stick with us here and we'll be right back.
Woodward Sports' own Tom Mazaway and Sam Stick Day will be hosting our Lions postgame show after every Lions game all season long. Tune into the Woodward Sports YouTube channel for his hot-off-the-press takes, game analysis, and Kool-Aid sipping celebrations. You won't want to miss it. Join Maz, Stick, and special guests each week immediately following every Lions game, exclusively on the WSN YouTube channel. Brace yourselves, Detroit. As the sun begins to set, two of Woodward Sports' brightest young stars will be taking the mic for a brand new show. Woodward Nights with Broder and Broder. The dog days in Detroit are over, and the boys are unleashed. Join in on the banter and hop on the bandwagon of the #1 night show on the internet. Tune into the Woodward Sports YouTube channel every weeknight from 8 to 10 p.m. Woodward Nights with Broder and Broder.
Welcome back. This is Woodward and Main Street, your Lions Insider show on Woodward Sports Network. Thanks for waking up early with us on this Tuesday morning. Come back around on Sunday, 8 a.m. on game day, as we will be previewing the Lions versus the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to get the right bird this time. We're going to give you a little taste of what you're going to be seeing more on Sunday, but I want to get into this quote that Dan Campbell shared in his press conference. We had some really good opportunities that we didn't capitalize from. I know it stings, and those guys are disappointed. I'm disappointed, the staff is, but my gosh, man, this is good. We'll get a little humble pie here. We've got a real good opponent coming in here next week, and they run it as good, if not better than these guys, and they have better weapons. A lot of talk about the humble pie, a lot of talk about you learn more from your losses than you learn from your wins. So what do they need to learn? One thing that they need to learn from this loss before a potential win against the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to touch on something that Dan Campbell had already mentioned, the turnovers. He said it, they're not good enough for that many turnovers. So that is my #1 quick hit on the list of something that the Lions have to fix going into Atlanta next week. Matt Broder?
Yeah, turnovers were definitely a huge part, if not the most important part of why they lost the game to the Seahawks. I think penalties too. They got to clean up their penalties, both on offense and defense. It seemed while they didn't have a huge quantity of penalties, when they did get a penalty, it was at the most inopportune times. You know, on the first series they went down, I think it was a 3rd and 2. They got called for too many men on the field, and that was kind of the first moment where it's like, oh man, like I hope this isn't going to be a theme of the day. And then later on in the drive, no fault of his own, C.J. Gardner-Johnson makes a huge play tackling Kenneth Walker behind the line of scrimmage. I believe it was for a 5-yard loss right near the Lions' goal line. And just because of how energized he was and excited, he got up and he shoved Kenneth Walker as he was trying to get up to. And it was a penalty, but it wasn't. He didn't have that intent. But those guys got to be mentally tough and able to, avoid making those mental errors. That's a mental mistake, having a penalty like that at that time. So
a man has said it was a stupid penalty.
It was a stupid penalty.
It was dumb. But the key word to me in all this is humble pie.
Oh, yeah.
I think what Dan Campbell was pretty much saying is all week after the Kansas City game, the players have been told your shit don't stink. So, and he probably couldn't reach them as a coach like he really wanted to. He would, he would say certain things and they were like, yeah, okay, whatever, coach, yeah, blah, blah, blah. it's easier to reach players after a loss or after you look at your season and say, if we lose this game, we're in big trouble. So I think, Pete Carroll had an easier job last week. He's telling these guys, hey, fellas, we done if you lose in Detroit. And Dan Campbell is trying to tone it down a little bit. Hey, fellas, we're not there yet. We haven't won anything. Yes, we won at Kansas City, but that's one game. If you finish 1-16, that's a failure of a season. So guys tune you out sometimes, or maybe not tune you out, but they're not as engaged. It's sometimes when you think you're there, and they weren't there. But the Lions seem unfocused. The one day I went to the dressing room. We talk about ski masks. We talk about all kinds of stuff except the Seattle Seahawks. So I think that's what he meant by humble pie. And you're both right, but I think this humble pie thing really bit him in the ass.
And I mean, that's what you went back to even at the top of the episode and last week, that was going to be the thing, the pessimistic thing that could keep them from winning this game. So I think now we have to hone the opposite of that, like you're saying, have the humble pie, use that grit, use that energy that the Lions are known for. And I think you can also add in there the fact that so many players have been injured and kind of that mentality of playing for those guys that aren't going to be able to get out on the field with us that have made such a big difference on this team up until this point.
Just like after the first game, you have to have a short memory now going into this game against Atlanta. Like the famous coach Ted Lasso said, there's two buttons I never like to hit, the panic button and the snooze button. This isn't a time for them to panic. It's a time for them to move on, learn from this Seattle game, and make sure that Atlanta doesn't have an easy time coming here to Ford Field on Sunday.
I wonder if the fans will bring the same amount of energy that they brought to this first game. Because
I hope so.
They can't.
No?
You can't do that two weeks in a row. You can be enthused, but they're not going to be as loud as they were in this game, because going into the Seattle game, you were looking at an opportunity for the Lions to be an elite team in the NFL. It's something this fan base really, really wanted. Now, a lot of people are going to come there. They're going to be enthused, but there's going to be a little bit of doubt there. So that little bit of doubt is going to knock down the decibel levels, which got as high as 122 down to 106, 107. They'll yell, but they can't bring it emotionally the same as they did last week, because there's going to be some doubters in the stands now.
It seems like there are a lot of doubters. The SOL crew is starting to surface a little bit. So I hope they turn out. And
Don't blame them, though. I don't blame them.
It's tricky, Terry. You think SOL might be?
No, I don't agree with it. I just don't
okay.
blame them. I'm calling this SONFL.
Oh, okay.
I don't blame them, because I don't think it's about the performance of this year's team. I think the SOL crew is the performance of Lions years past, and it's resurfacing, and those old wounds are starting to reopen again. Not because of this team, but just because of all of the pain of the past. It's right there on the surface. They can feel it, and they don't want it to come back up.
And the people are passionate about this team. They will never. A lot of them will never give up on the Lions, no matter what they do. But when they're all engaged and the Lions don't come through, some people are going to go, oh, shoot, here we go again.
So this is the fourth largest crowd in Ford Field history. So will they show out in those same numbers? I'm hoping so. You already have those set amount of the season ticket holders that are sold out for Ford Field. But it was a packed house on Sunday. And I think seeing those numbers come out in those same amounts is going to be essential for this game on this Sunday at this point. It's pivotal for the Lions to turn around. It's pivotal for the fans to have their backs. And it's pivotal, I think, that nobody brings a blue ski mask to this game. Any arguments there?
No ski mask. In fact, I ran into a lady before the game, and she was mad. She said, if C.J. Gardner Johnson is going to tell us to wear ski masks, why can't he do it in for December game or January game.
That is
I'm
very
hot
true.
as hell. And
It was
she's
so
mad because
hot.
her hair got all messed up.
It was so hot in there. Normally I can wear a jacket into Ford Field and I'm fine. I don't have to take it off. Well, I was sporting my blue jacket that I was wearing for the show on Sunday, and then I had my ski mask, and I was like, it stayed on for probably 2
Did you wear
minutes.
that jacket to the game?
Yes, I did.
You big risk, young lady. I like that jacket. You ran the risk of some clown spilling beer all over it and ruin it.
That's true.
Gotta
You
be
always
careful.
have to factor that in, especially because I was sitting next to Seahawks fans.
Oh yeah, you got to
never
wear
know.
bad clothes to Lion games.
Lesson learned.
Nothing
Lesson
nice.
learned. I'll take that into note for this next week.
You should probably wear your hat too.
I have to because I got this hat at the game on Sunday.
Look at
so
that.
I gotta sport it now.
Now, did you pay for it or did somebody give it to you?
No, it was the giveaway. If you were one of the first, I don't know what the number was, to enter Ford Field for the game, you got a free hat.
Oh damn, I didn't know that.
Heck yeah.
You
So I
early.
got a free hat. Now I gotta get some use out of it. Thought it was a perfect opportunity to wear it on the show today, just to celebrate the potential that the Lions have against the Falcons this coming Sunday. So we'll get more into details for that on Sunday. We'll see you back here at 8 a.m. I'm Gabrielle D. Phillips, Matt Broder, Terry Foster. This is Woodward and Main Street, your Lions Insider Show. And tune back in 10 minutes for the Morning Woodward Show.
Now, coming to Woodward Sports, Woodward and Main Street, the Woodward Sports Network Detroit Lions show. Let's go! Catch Gabrielle D. Phillips, Matt Broder, and Terry Foster for all the latest news on your Detroit Lions every week. Only on the Woodward Sports Network YouTube channel and woodwardsports.com.